Welcome back to Strong, everybody. I am so excited. Another amazing guest on our fabulous Strong journey. For anyone watching this for the very first time, welcome to the journey that we call Strong. Strong was created to help everyday people recognize real stories, understand what real people are experiencing in their lives. The big aim is that we create a global community of strong role models to empower and support our youth all over the world. Season 1 is all about females. It all started when I lost my daughter, and I had decided that I wanted to take the journey of our lives and share it with the aim of making sure that we are able to have real vulnerable conversations. Gone are the days in my life when I had to be strong and pretend that I wasn't human. And I hope that this journey helps anybody watching it, no matter how young or young at heart you are, that you watch it and begin to understand, in order to empower the youth, we have to have real conversations, and we have to show them that it's okay to be strong and to be vulnerable. So welcome to Strong, Dani. I am so excited to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having me. This is super exciting.
So Dani, you've met me in a really interesting way. I remember clearly the night that we met. We crossed paths. Would you like to share how that happened?
Yeah, so both at a social media event, broadening our skill set and our horizons, and given the opportunity to kind of take the stage and tell people what it was that we did. And I think I was sort of second in the queue, and maybe you were like 2 or 3 behind me. And at that point,
many more behind you.
We've not kind of met, before that point, so didn't really know what each other did or what we were kind of talking about. So obviously I got up and told everybody what I was working on at the time. It was very focused around helping people prioritize mental health. That's what I kind of do as my day job with the company that I co-founded with 2 others called Safe Space. And then you kind of followed up when I slowly made it back to my seat at that point, and you kind of told your story and introduced Strong, and I was just like, oh, hey, we need to do something about this. So it was just that, we were both there at the right time and the right place. And yeah, I'm glad the universe threw you in my direction.
That was that was the first time I went public. I mean, Strong is public, but that was the first time I went on a stage and saw real people in front of me and talked about Dani and talked about Strong. So I remember being in that queue, and I remember hearing people in front of me, and I had about 6 minutes. So I must have been the 7th person in the queue. And it was too much time. I remember thinking, what am I doing? I don't even know what I'm going to say. I don't know what am I supposed to talk about? And then I got on that stage, and I remember walking off the stage, and you were one of the first people that I spoke to. And it was hearing you as interested in the project as I am. And it made me think, okay, I can keep going. And that's so great. And it's so great that we met that way. And I'm so excited that you're also here. But we know that you're not here to be the professional Dani. We're here to talk about Dani, the person. So bringing it all together, who is Dani?
Such a deep question. And I think it depends, at the moment, it depends on the day of the week. Sometimes, I've really been on quite a journey to answer that. And I don't know if I know yet. I'm going to be completely transparent. When I sort of started probably really getting serious about my personal development, my growth, like not just sort of taking life for granted anymore. It was funny because I did this online coaching program, and within that context, there was a lot of big questions like that. What are your values? What's important to you? I had to Google, if one had values, what would one's values be? Like, I was at that point where I really had no idea, no clue as to what was even important to me. And that was a real wake-up call, I suppose, in do other people have values? Like, is this something that everybody should have? It's like quite self-conscious at that point too as well. But a moment where I did realize that in order to be able to grow, you have to figure out who you are. And 4 years I've been, on this journey, really working hard to figure that out. And I think I always have done. I've always defined myself in how other people view me. And now it's that kind of, I'm a mother to 2 children. I'm a co-founder of a business. I'm, a wife, average wife, not necessarily a great wife. I'm an only child. My parents are only children too, so I'm this weird only child that has everything kind of flipped in that kind of context. But I think it's so much more than the hats you wear. It's what I kind of stand for, which I know now about honesty and integrity and that kind of authenticity. I still don't get it right, but it's what I try and be and what I try and do. Which I suppose makes me who I am, and I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I think I've described myself as Marmite before, kind of love me or you hate me, and I don't mind having that sort of polar reaction now. I think you really have to be quite all in on the people that you choose to have around you, and I'm quite happy to really attract my tribe through knowing who I am a bit clearer now. So I think it's still a work in progress, in all honesty, but that is who I am.
It's so great to hear you describe it in that way, Dani, because I think sometimes, especially when we're talking with the youth, they seem to think they have to wake up and have it all together. And the idea of fitting in, because they don't want to stand out, but then they don't want to fit in, they want to stand out. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. So hearing you describe, it's a journey, it's a process, and also hearing you say, and I don't think I'm there yet, but I'm okay with that right now. So that's so important to keep repeating, isn't it, to young people? Because if as women, we're still trying to figure it out, how on earth do we expect, or how on earth would they expect that they should get it immediately?
One of the little sort of turning points for me in that process, and I'd sort of refer to 4 years ago, was when I got just so exhausted of trying to be who others thought I should be. And then that literally led to the wheels falling off of me having to get to grips with who I was. So, I think that is always changing, has always changed, and I'll be a different person, from learning things now in the next 10 years. But that was definitely a sort of pivotal point of realization, exhaustion, of trying to be something for other people.
What made you realize that you knew that you were on a journey, but you wanted to be Dani and not be what somebody else thought you should be?
Rock bottom, face first, crying in a client meeting, having, people around me very not scared, I think that's maybe a bit too, but just like always approaching me with caution, not really knowing if they could say something without me kind of, I wear my heart on my sleeve, so it doesn't matter if I explode or not, what I'm thinking. And it was that sort of process and that culmination of, this can't go on anymore, but also coupled with the fact that I found out that I was pregnant and having a baby girl. Now, I always feel this is a little bit, it's a bit, I didn't have this sensation when I was having my first child, who was a boy. I went through kind of quite a sort of nitty, like postnatal depression, exhaustion, losing, even my small identity that I had when I became a mother for the first time. And it wasn't until, like I was saying, that point where I hit rock bottom, which was maybe it was about 6 months after he was born, where I'd gone back to work. I was working 10, 12-hour days sometimes, responsible for sort of quite a, my budget within the agency, my team that I work with. And like having those pressured moments of, pitches where I just couldn't handle it anymore. People sort of saying to me like, you're not the Dani that, you know, you used to be, or you're not the Dani that I employed, or clients sort of, again, not being able to sort of trust me with things. That made me sort of reconfirm where I was up to. And physically, I was also very sick too. I just wasn't well at all, mentally, emotionally, physically. Everything was sort of quite tricky. And I went to the doctors and I had like no vitamin D in my system. My thyroid wasn't working. My blood sugars were all over the place. I was the heaviest I had ever been. And I was pregnant. And it was just like, where are the hidden cameras? Like, you're absolutely kidding me right now. Like, this is not the plan. This is not what I signed up. How the hell can I be pregnant? This is, you know, Virgin Mary, Immaculate Conception. Like, how is this possible? Not now. This is not what I need. And it was just such a like, when I told my husband, for the first time, I laughed in a long time, because at that point I couldn't do anything else, because it was quite a cruel joke, because I couldn't even, you know, do the first baby, let alone now bring another one into this world. But it was perfectly placed, and looking back now through very different eyes, you know, very respectful, and also with gratitude that kind of happened, because it was the real hard stop that I needed to be like, this isn't about you anymore. Can't continue. This is about other people, not just one person. This is other people now. You've got a team, a squad. And when I found out it was a little girl, then that just shifted everything. So I was like, how could I be a role model for this young lady? Like, I don't even know who I am. I don't even know kind of what's important to me. I'm just not aware. And that was a big responsibility that before I wasn't ready for. I was okay if it was going to be a boy, because boys play football and they don't, which was really naive of me to think that way, and I kind of probably shouldn't. But the girl thing really, really pushed me into a place that I probably needed to go at that point, but I wasn't ready for it just then.
Is it okay if we go backwards in time for a few years anyway? So take us back to the younger Dani, the 14-year-old, the 15-year-old. What was it like to be that Dani?
You know, I suppose I like had zero real self-awareness at that perspective. When I kind of look back on paper, I had everything. I was popular. I was, you know, one of the brainiest in the class. Never had to study for exams. Came from a really, you know, good family who, you know, I had every love, every care that I needed from them. Hobbies, sports, like literally textbook. And then when it was probably a couple of years later, started to struggle with, I hurt my back and I started to struggle with back pain. It started to put some context around who I'd sort of been before then. And being probably quite frank and honest with myself, I don't think I was a nice person. I think because I had everything on a plate, that it did make me a bit of a bitch. You know, and I had sort of situations where even like girls that I was really good friends with turned on me, and, you know, were both like physically violent with me, and you know, emotionally that was sort of a quite tough time, because again, I couldn't understand why me of all people was having to go through, you know, this bullying, I suppose, for want of a better word, from other people, because I was good to go. There's nothing wrong with me. You know, so it was a real lack of awareness at that perspective, that then when I started to struggle with back pain, and it was something that kind of started and then got gradually worse, everything started kind of falling away. So I lost my flexibility, my ability to kind of be sporty and sort of keep up with people. And in that process, obviously, I was gaining weight, and that meant I didn't look like the person that I looked like before. And dealing with chronic pain is a bit of a tough ride. So I wasn't probably as friendly as I could have been. I was, you know, quite annoyed. I also felt like a bit of a victim. Why me? I've done nothing to deserve this. I also had sort of quite a strange relationship with it, where I kind of went through a phase of really I wanted people to know that I was in pain. I wanted people to have sympathy for me, because, you know, back pain is sort of quite invisible. No one really gave me any credit or any leeway or any space to kind of be with that stuff. So it slowly just peeled away, little bits, until I got to university, which was good because I went as far away from home as I could manage at that point. I went from Manchester to Edinburgh, and I got a chance to kind of not be the person that everybody at home knew me in the village I'd grown up, and maybe be a new Dani, a new version, but still struggling with the back pain. It was really hard. I'd make no bones about it. It was pretty grim at points. Having to get the girls I live with to dress me, put my socks and shoes on because I just couldn't, reach my feet at that point. And that's when the sort of clinical depression really kicked in. I was sad. I was really sad, epically sad, which obviously turned out to be, suffering with depression, not just depressed, but really kind of not having any control over that anymore.
How old were you at that time, Dani?
So I just started uni, so I was 18, I think. And I still remember going to the doctor that was on the campus at the university that I went to, and I couldn't even speak to the lady because I was just snot was coming out my nose. Like I was just crying because I had to keep it in the whole time. And I was in freshers, I was in my first year at uni, I was making friends, we lived on campus, we were going out drinking 50p vodkas, dirham vodkas pretty much every night and having the time of our lives and smiling and happy, and again, pretty exhausting when actually what I was going through internally was dark and painful, and that kind of combination was just was a lot for me to take. Because I think that looking back on my, like I said, the 14-year-old Dani, I'd never had to struggle for anything. I'd never really built up a resilience because everything had just come very easy to me. So actually going through a struggle, I think it could have been anything, and I probably wouldn't have been able to bounce back or handle it, in that kind of sense.
So going back to that 18-year-old Dani and, reaching out for help, how was it received internally with yourself? So you reached out for help, and I'm sure that help was offered to you. How did you receive that help?
Yeah, I always, I kind of, and I sort of said this to someone the other day, like it was very easy at that point for that doctor to diagnosed me with depression and put me on antidepressants. I ticked every single box, like of course. But what it's a different healthcare system in the UK as well. You really have to, work really hard to kind of get the support you need. And there was never really, and maybe there was, and I was just, I didn't hear it at that time, but there was just no safety net. There was no support from kind of a lifestyle therapy, other than the medication and the diagnosis and maybe a follow-up in 3 months' time or whatever it is for the refill of my medication. There was nothing to really bridge that gap. And even from the perspective of, it was very transparent that it was my pain that was causing me to feel, not be able to handle that pain. And even that was still being put down to, you're still growing, it's growing pains. That wasn't even being investigated properly. It wasn't until I paid to go to a private hospital to figure out my back stuff, and I was operated on the next week because it was kind of so severe. And I just felt really fobbed off by the whole process. It was so easy for that doctor to diagnose me because I ticked every box, but it was also a 10-minute appointment. What else was she to do? She didn't have everything within her power in order to be able to maybe refer me to the right people. Maybe she didn't have the resources, but it's what I needed. And I didn't get it at the time. And all I did was just continue on, doing my life as it was, putting on the sort of smile, going out partying, and taking the medication at the same time, but not really addressing the root of the problem, or obviously what I know now to be a better way. But at the time was just kind of, doing what I could.
What do you think you had that helped you to stay resilient as opposed to just giving up, which is the biggest fear of a parent anywhere in the world?
Well, I don't think it was resilience, knowing what I do know about resilience now. I think it was more like stubbornness. and also like a curiosity. I was that kid that was like, but why, but why, but why? Which actually, when I kind of channeled it then into, this isn't right what I'm going through, but what can I do out? You know, why is this happening to me? Can I try and fix myself, I suppose, in that kind of instance? And I think, again, sort of having that only child syndrome of also having parents that are only children, I'm quite resourceful in my own kind of space. My parents are also very independent too, so I've grown up not just being an only child in that sense of the apple of everybody's eye, but actually also coming from very independent parents too. So resourceful versus resilient, stubborn, and just really kind of still only not still with high expectations of myself as well, and never ever being really good at fully applying myself to. Like we all know on paper what we're supposed to do, and this was the kind of, obviously I gained quite a lot of weight at this point. I was putting more pressure on my back, and every time I would go to these appointments, like, you just need to lose weight, and I'm like, yes, I'm fully aware of this. Like, I'm not a stupid person. I'm intelligent. I'm at university. I just don't have the ability and the resources, the support net, the backup in order to make that happen. And I don't think I'm the only one. I think this is when we go to, you know, a doctor or anybody that's giving us that sort of typical advice of you need to eat healthier and move more. There's a lot of internal resistance. You know, I felt very triggered even by that kind of conversation, and even now I don't know what the right words would have been to say to me at that point. So I had to find my own route. Like, I didn't get on with the typical physiotherapy, so I had to turn to Pilates, and it was in that kind of process where I started to then realize, oh, well, the body's really connected in different ways, which I would never have got from a physiotherapist, because that's more about treating, you know, one specific thing rather than actually looking at how your body works. And then that would fire something else. It'd be like, right, okay, so if that's all connected, then that I need to like look into what this means next. So I've tried everything, tried a bit of everything, legal and illegal, and just trying to figure out what it was that would either take the edge off temporarily, which was always and is always a thing, that quick fix, probably more so than a long-term solution at that point. So it took a while. To kind of get there.
For anyone watching this, maybe a parent, maybe somebody going through something very similar, maybe a new mom, could be anybody. What advice would you give to anyone that, you know what, I learned this on my life journey, and this would just be something I wish someone told me?
So there's an element of the sort of compassion and kindness. I always think, and I have, even in sort of past years and within sort of in the past 4 years, been a real kind of advocate for, you know, self-love. And sometimes I think that's even maybe too much. We have to start with the, you know, self-awareness, so like kindness and compassion, and those sort of in its smallest essence, and how we can really get to know what our body, what she needs right now, what Dani needs right now. And I think that's something that we're not really told ever how to do, you know, through the sort of typical education systems and also particular like upbringings, unless you're, you know, I've probably seen it more in my friends that have like, you know, weird and wonderful hippie mums that kind of get really into that sort of space a lot sooner with their kids, and their eyes are a lot more open in that sense. But I think that's not really ever packaged very well. It's not really something that's dug deep into. Just spend so much of your childhood having to learn and excel in really ridiculous things like geography and, you know, all these other things that we're taught at school. I think we're really missing a trick in that essence, and really preparing people for the tough bit of life.
What would you say are some of the hardest challenges that you faced, but the top tips that got you through it?
I've always, like, the one thing that I've struggled with the most, and I can kind of, sugarcoat it in other ways, but is being in a big body, being fat, being overweight. It's just something that I have never, again, like I said, pre to my back stuff, I never experienced it. So I've seen the world through skinny eyes. I've seen the world through, two different perspectives, and it really, really sucks. And I was talking to my husband about this, and I don't know if he fully believes me. I don't know until you've lived this way. People do treat you differently, and I used to be quite, annoyed by that. But then when I really took a long, hard look, I'm probably guilty of that myself. In this sort of fat phobia, fat sort of. We're doing everything in this sense to avoid becoming, being someone that looks like me, and that's really, it just, even like talking about it makes me feel quite emotional, because it's so hard to live that way when it's just skin and body and bones and stuff. It never really, and I've been in instances where, and even at sort of like random like networking things, and I know people say, oh no, you're talking rubbish, but I've seen the world through two sets of eyes, and I'm super intuitive. I'm on the nose, and people, takes a little bit longer sometimes for me to really get people to take me seriously, and to really say, oh yeah, this chick knows what she's talking about, because I come in a large package. And that in turn just was this sort of self-fulfilling, just was so difficult for me to really be able to step out of. And when I'm sort of then in this space where I'm preaching messages of like body love and body positivity, and actually still being truthful, having those kind of like fat phobic thoughts myself, it was even more difficult as well. And it's something that I spent my whole adult life dieting and trying to not be, the person that I was. And that messes you up. It really messes you up. And all the messages that we get continuously with, you've got to look a certain way and be a certain way. It's just so difficult to be able to switch off from that. And again, be Dani when you don't like the way she looks. It was tough. It's something that I still struggle with. I've not kind of cracked that. I've spent 4 years doing the loving yourself stuff, and I'm pretty good at that now. But there's still a little element where I feel physically heavy, and I don't like the fact that I can't go to any store, online, in person, and not pick something up. And I love dressing up, and I love being like flamboyant and vibrant, but stuff doesn't fit me. It doesn't come in my size, and that pisses me off, because I don't have the same opportunities. Sounds a bit okay. I've been making my own clothes. I've been trying to kind of do everything, but usually like the plus size stuff it's not great. It's a bit frumpy. So yeah.
Thank you so much for just being really, really real with us today. I think it's so refreshing to be able to have a conversation where we're really talking about real things that matter to us. And I know there's somebody watching this that's probably thanking you as well. What's it like to be Dani on a typical day? Now, looking from the outside, Dani comes across as really confident, very friendly, really, really intelligent, and you seem totally in control. So that's the external, what we see. But what's it like to be Dani on a typical day, and what do you do when nobody's watching?
So I like the analogy of the swan, whereas kind of what you see on the surface is one thing, but under the surface, I'm like paddling like my life depends on it to get from A to B. And I'm someone that even like with my anxiety, like I'm high functioning with my kind of anxiety and depression. Like it's still with me, but I kind of use it in order to kind of propel. But that takes a lot of work in order for that not to kind of come out verbally, physically, like I said, wearing my heart on my sleeve like I do. What you see is what you get most of the time, but actually there's a lot more depth to that. So I don't sleep very well. I have children that also don't sleep very well, so that makes it even worse. So actually, a lot of the time, I'm really trying to just overcompensate for everything in order to kind of keep on track. And when you're tired, like again, a sort of physical exhaustion, it's tricky. It's really difficult. So again, through that's the sort of personal development stuff that I've done, I really do try and work hard to set myself up in the morning for a good day, choosing that this is what's going to happen. And that is, again, not always easy. I'm quite easily derailed in these processes too, whether my kids act up or my husband says the wrong thing, or they're my only people that I see at the moment. That's kind of all I've got to go with. It sort of takes a lot. So it's funny because a lot of people always say to me, "Oh God, I don't know how you do what you do. Like you do so much. You run, 2 businesses. You've got kids. You've da 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 da." And it does take a little minute for me to be like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I do. I probably do more than the average human being, but it's because I'm only used to overcompensating on everything that I do. So I can't. It's like I can't stop." So I don't want to stop. I'm scared that if I stop, then I'm probably going to have to address some other of the demons in the closet. So I just keep going.
And I can resonate with that because I feel that I'm probably on that same journey with you, overcompensating and overdoing. And what I'm trying to catch myself on, and maybe tell me if that's something that you're trying to catch yourself on too, is are we really the right type of role models for younger people? Because I know in my day I'm like doing and doing and doing, and it's not just doing, it's kind of like always striving for the best, right? But then we look at our children and people that are around us, and I wonder if I'm being realistic in the expectation that you can do everything and you can make it look seamless as well. Would you say that you catch yourself doing that as well?
Yes, I'm very good in theory, but not in practice. And this is something I'm trying to not say this too much out loud because again, I'm trying to move away from it. But I'm a starter, not a finisher. So I'm very good at like having an idea, but then going ahead with it. So I'll be very critical about how my husband parents the children, but still then do it myself. And I think kids, is like tiny kids, especially your kids, they're just little sponges. And I see, my anxiety is like my son has terrible sleep anxiety. No bloody wonder, because his mum does too. It's really difficult to have that, mirror and saying like, shit, that's my fault. I did that. And I'm almost like hoping that I'm looking forward to the time when they're a bit older, when I can have like really rational conversations. But I think that's probably more of my sweet spot than, where we're at now. And I think the tricky pressure on that when I'm doing a lot of like the mental health work, and we're talking about things about how your subconscious forms within the first 7 years of your life. And I'm like, it's always like this ticking that's going off, like, okay, you've got 3 years left with one of them. You've got, to be able to make them into the brilliant humans that they need to be. But then on the flip side of that, I've also got a little bit of, because I've had such high expectations for myself, that's something that I'm trying in some ways to have the complete opposite. It's almost like a bit of again, that curiosity and like theory with them. Like, I don't want them to grow up and be doctors and lawyers, and because actually they work too many goddamn hours and there's a lot of pressure on them. Like, be a sailor, or make shoes, or do whatever it is that kind of makes you happy. And I think that's probably where I've learned, and I'll be even more willing to. I think if I could, I probably wouldn't have them in normal schooling as it is now. I've always wanted to put them into weird and wonderful schools, but that's kind of not gone down well at home. In order for me to get that backup I need from the education system, and how to, develop them as worldly wide, aware, switched on human beings. It's a lot of responsibility when it comes down to you, you personally. So
it is.
That's your model.
And I think you look like you're doing a great job from the outside, and that's what I worry about sometimes in the work that I do, is we make it look so easy. Like you said, like on the outside, the swan is so beautiful, but there's all that work being done that you can't see to stay afloat. And I'm always trying to remind myself, especially after October 10th, that I want to be able to do my best, but also show what progress looks like along the way. So if you could go back to that younger Dani and say, Dani, this is what is coming. This is what's going to help you. What would those tips to Dani be?
It's funny because I just don't think she would listen. She'd just, she'd turn on her heels and trot in the other direction quite proudly. It would take a lot for me to be able to really get through, I think, that exterior that I had at that time. And it's only been actually experiencing it that has made me grateful for it and understand why it happened in my life. And it's got me to this point where I am now the perfect person to be doing what I'm doing, because I've walked in the shoes without being pre-warned that it was going to happen to me. So I think it's that almost it's that movie where he goes back in time. Anyway, is that kind of process where actually, would you be really screwing up Dani now, who I've actually really kind of got to know and love by giving her some information down there? Would I be who I am if I'd have got like a tip or a warning that it was coming? Maybe if I could whisper, I was just kind of hiding in the bushes and I'd be whispering that it's all going to happen for a reason. That I may have had a little bit more faith in that process and not been as, in anguish, like, oh God, why is this happening to me? I don't understand anymore. It might have been like, oh, I remember that. I remember the bushes. And the whisper that came, and it's like, the fortune teller, if I probably have to go undercover in the caravan and a crystal ball to say, ooh, this will happen in your future. So, yeah.
I think it's a really interesting thing to ask ourselves. I know that if I had to go back to my younger self, I'd probably say, be nicer to your mom. And I'd also say, just keep moving forward, whatever, just keep moving forward. So Dani, Strong is about creating global communities. It's about supporting each other. It's about sharing real stories, taking off the masks of perfection and taking off this idea of what we're supposed to be and just allowing everyone to be. But it's also about the woman in front of me, the woman that has offered to share her story. How can we support you on your strong journey?
So I think for me, and this is where, again, like I said, my life is netted out at this point, which is really focusing on how to get people to prioritize their mental health. And I think for me, because I am from a marketing background and I'm not a mental health professional, it's been a real, the bit that it's kind of distilling down into, that we've got this real huge, scary task ahead of us in order to kind of rebrand mental health in a way that people can start to get to grips with it and not leave it on a shelf until it's too late, or to address it, to work with it, to, really have it as part of your life rather than something separate to your physical health. So I suppose for me, I just love people to really just pay more attention to their whole health, and how the emotional health and their physical health and their spiritual health, as well as their mental health, in order to, once we have that awareness, in order to be able to seek, everything's out there. Everyone's written books on everything. Everyone's got podcasts and everything. Everyone's got, experts in this, that, and the other. So your expert or your information is out there somewhere. But until you know what it is that you need to kind of prioritize for you, then you're going to keep having the same results. You're not going to be able to find that expert, that person, that piece of information that resonates you and you find helpful. So I think it's really just being able to have that sort of 20 seconds to promote that level of self-awareness, that we can all just be a bit more respectful of our health, that without it we've got nothing. Doesn't matter what we have in the bank, doesn't matter how many friends we've got, doesn't matter how many likes we get on our posts, blah blah blah. It's really kind of comes back down to us, what makes us happy, what makes us tick, our values, and being able to kind of work with those.
And what about you, Dani? What can we do for you?
So we have set up an initiative called Safe Space. So please just come and follow us, Safe Space DXB, on Instagram and pretty much every social channel, really. That's where you will find us. And let us entertain you. Let us help you in that kind of process. It's a work in progress. It's evolving. It's happening kind of in front of us. And we want people to kind of be involved in that, and actually just having more people along to jam that out with is really fun.
Sounds great. So anybody watching right now, check out safespace.dxb on the website and on all of the social channels as well. Thank you so much, Dani. Thank you for sharing your story and for being so transparent with us today. I know that this conversation is definitely going to be supporting somebody somewhere in the world. And that brings us to the end of another amazing episode. If you're just tuning in for the first time, welcome to Strong. Strong is a journey of connecting real people all over the world. Let's start sharing our life stories. Let's stop wearing our masks of perfection so that the youth can start to understand that life is a journey. And together we can raise strong, empowered youth that will create change in the world. And that's my dream. So join us again next week when we bring another amazing guest onto the Strong platform. Thank you for watching, everybody.